This week, I've got the pleasure of sitting down with a really inspirational guy with a really relatable story, co-founder and managing partner of Forsyth Barnes, Roheel Ahmad. Roheel's story starts from humble and honest family beginnings, call centre work, and an unparalleled drive to emulate the work ethic of his father, to now running Forsyth Barnes, turning over £12 million this year, amazing staff trips to Vegas and New York. Forsyth Barnes are a leading talent consultancy in the emerging tech market, working with brands such as Pretty Little Thing and Boohoo, but just to name a couple. He goes into detail about his upbringing, his life so far, and his fascinating story, and the journey so far in his business and how that's changed over the last 5 or so years. His love for the sector is obvious and enthralling, and he's an absolute success story. We touch upon the startup do's and don'ts of a business, hiring, and so much more. In this podcast, we also put over 15 questions to Roheel that have actually been asked by listeners, which is good. So if you have sent a question over to us, please tune in and you may actually get an answer. This business is going places, Roheel's going places, and he's making waves and setting new levels across the board. It's a real must listen to episode. I've personally walked away learning a lot from the short time talking prior, during and after the podcast recording, and I know I'll be a better human being and a better leader because of that time spent. So, welcome to the podcast, Roheel. Thanks for coming to see us.
Cheers for having me.
Second guest on, so new in, which is good. I just want to open up, and I think it'd be good for listeners just to get a bit of a background and understanding on you and also your business as well. Before we sort of go into different things, there's quite a bit planned for today. So I want to just put you on the spot a little bit if you're up for a bit of a challenge. So I'll give you 2 minutes. I've got a 2-minute target on it. I just want you to have 2 minutes just to explain, in a high level, what your business does, what FB is all about, and try and fit it in within 2 minutes.
Cool. All right. So Forsyth Barnes, talent consultancy. We specialise in the exec search end of the market in what we call emerging tech markets, basically. So fintech, what we coin in turn is e-tail. So less with your kind of traditional retailers, more your exciting online pure play type businesses as well. Your Boohoo, Pretty Little Things, those kind of businesses as well. And then the other piece to the business is the sports sector as well, which, as being sports nuts in the business, is hugely exciting to us. Yeah. So we do a lot of C-suite, a lot of head of, a lot of non-exec work there and work with those businesses on a strategic basis. And the other side of the business is we work with a lot of tech businesses on their sort of tech transformation programs. Okay. So whether it's implementation, digital transformation, things like that they're going through a journey in their business. We actually work with them to implement those projects, to deliver those projects, and get away from them because they don't really have the internal capability. And so we go out into the market and we deliver those projects for them in a nutshell.
Okay, that's within 2 minutes, so that's good. Tick in the box. So in terms of FB then, in terms of how you're playing in the industry, what is it that you do differently to other players?
So traditionally that exec search market has been quite stuffy, quite an off-the-shelf type service. Taking an example in the way that they bill clients, it's always traditionally been like a third up front for the time when you're retaining us, a third on probably successful submission of shortlist, and a third on successful placement of an individual that the business takes on, right? Yeah. So straight away we looked at that model and said we ripped it up in terms of what we did. Not going to charge the kind of same traditional model. It was always regarded for bigger businesses or completely just that top end C-suite hires. And it's always been a better service. And we kind of looked at it and said, well, why is it just reserved for that upper echelons of business or at certain levels within businesses as well? Why can't it be applied to a head of? Why can't it be applied to a director? Why can't it be applied to a department, for instance, working on the same sort of model? Because the service is better. So for us, I look at our sector and I love our sector. It's a brilliant sector overall. I think it affords so many people these amazing opportunities, right? But at the same time, we're still stuck in these practices that were born sort of 25, 30 years ago. That contingent model, it doesn't work for clients. It's a self-serving model for our own industry. Because all they do is any kind of recruitment business, they look at it and they go through and they think, it's all about ROI on our time. And that's a big problem with contingent model. But that's what clients have now been used to for the last sort of couple of decades or so. So now we're going out into the businesses that we work with and trying to re-educate them and say, well, look, if you do it that way, you're only ever going to be limited by the mindset and the needs of the partner that you're working with.
Yeah.
The model that we've kind of put into the marketplace now and work with them on is more of a shared ownership model. There's shared risk, but there's shared gain to it as well. And by doing that, we don't have to focus on ROI on our time. So straight away, we can look at these businesses and say, actually, what do you actually need? What do you actually want? Why do you want the things that you want? Where is your business going over the next sort of 12, 24 months? By doing that, we can actually focus on what the client needs rather than what we are looking to get out of it. Because we know that the commercials can be looked after.
So it's more of a true partnership part of the business rather than rather than just a service that you're selling into these people. So just for our listeners that are not experienced in that particular sector, talk to me for a minute about the old model.
So the old model is traditionally you get a business, they're looking for a senior individual, they'll go out to market, they'll probably speak to 5 odd recruiters, brief them all on this role, and it's about getting as many different profiles from as many different sources as they can. Because the more people that I go out to, the more chance I've got of getting someone who's decent out there.
Yeah.
But actually, again, what's broken about that is those 5 are going to look at it and think, right, what's my chance of actually making some money off of this opportunity?
Yeah.
Well, I've got these other 5 roles that I'm looking at the same time. Which one's first on my priority list? Right, I'm going to spend more time on that one, a little less time on this one, a little bit less time on this one, a little less time on this one.
Yeah.
That's how they look at it. They don't actually look at it and think, actually, what does this business need? Can we do it? Have we got the network for it? Or can we actually facilitate what the company's looking for, etc., etc.? It's all about our own industry, not what the client needs.
Yeah. So I've always found out about recruitment in speaking to different people. I've always felt as a person looking for staff over the last few years, I've always found that it's hard to understand whether that agency really want to work on my role or not. And what I've always felt from an individual person that's looking after me perspective is they're probably just going to go after the stuff that makes them the most money, regardless of the opportunity.
Yeah, they do.
They're not going to respect my business and my role that I'm looking for. They're just going to look at it and think, okay, well, the rate's 12% there, the rate's 20% there, I'm going after the 20%, regardless of what it is, just because that's going to make them more money.
It's a balance. It tends to be a balance between fee on percentage, like you just mentioned there, but also they will weigh that up against likelihood of actually getting the fee from there as well. So 20%, but I'm never placing it in a million years, or the process is really difficult, that type of thing. Yeah. Then they'll still probably go down for the 15% opportunity where they think they'll actually bring that in and more likely to bring it in.
Yeah.
And again, all of that I'm talking about there is what am I getting as the recruiter and that.
It's nothing about the client.
No, it isn't. Yeah. And so, are they that bothered about your business? Probably not, unfortunately. But again, that's what we're trying to change up.
Okay. So that's interesting. So I think that gives people an understanding of what you do and traditionally where businesses in your sector play and where you're trying to be different and trying to move things forward. I think what it'll also be good for listeners to understand is just a bit about you. To start as well. So I'll give you the same challenge again. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Why don't you take us from Roheel, from youth up to before you started the business, from a personal perspective?
Started working as soon as I got my national insurance number, which is where I met you, when we were about 15 or so, in a call centre environment, which was probably one of the best sort of educational places I've ever been in, environments I've ever been in. Went through, still did my studies and everything, got a law degree, got quite disillusioned in my degree because I think I wasn't really happy doing the theory. But being honest, kind of going before uni, had an entrepreneurial mindset anyway. Yeah. Through uni, I just got lazy and wasn't really kind of living up to any real potential or anything like that. Completed my degree just to complete the degree. Yeah. To not be a flake, basically. That and no chance of coming home to my dad without having completed my degree. Yeah, of course, So a mix of the two. And then was pretty sure that I didn't want to go down that field, like post-degree. I just couldn't see myself training for another few years, being in a theoretical type environment again for the next few years.
What was the degree?
Practical law. So I wanted to get into a lot of work. I'd kind of always done sales since I was 15 and got that national insurance card. So I kind of looked for sales types opportunities. If I'm being honest, like most people didn't really recognise that there was a career opportunity in the recruitment sector and the talent sector. Did it, took the first job in London, thought I would be there for probably a year or so, move on, do something else. Sort of 10 years later, here I am still in the sector, I can't do anything else outside of it. And yeah, just made a genuine career out of it.
Must have a love for the sector, though.
I do. Honestly, I do. I think I don't know anything else that you can do that could afford you the opportunities that I've been afforded, that you can progress in the way that I had done, either working through other businesses or now the opportunity that I offer to other people as well. That you can earn the money in the kind of time frame that you can earn it in as well if you really put your all into it. And the experiences that come alongside that as well. I don't know, like if I think about being a doctor, if I think about being a solicitor or a barrister or whatever, you're training in those sectors in pretty crap conditions for what, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever it is on each of those kind of professions, if you like. Come out of that, you're earning average, like no disrespect to anyone out there. And in that time, I can think about people in my business now who are earning six figures after a couple of years. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's the norm. Whenever I interview people, I don't go and say, oh, you'll be earning six figures in 12 months like so many people out there. These guys are genuinely.
You've got the opportunity to do so if they play the cards right.
You've got the platform to do it. It's the rest is going to be up to you. You'll be given everything around to be able to go and achieve it. But you can't take a horse
as
to
with
water.
As with anything, a couple of percent that really go after it and take the opportunity and do what they want with it.
So that, and then family life. Got married a few years ago. A couple of kids now. And it's that constant balance of home, work, personal. I can see my friends in and around Northampton, unfortunately. So see them kind of once in a blue moon.
How old are your kids?
3 and 4 months.
3 and 4 months?
Yep.
Wow. Still going through the sleepless night period with the latest edition.
Yeah, do you know what, actually?
You look well for it though, there's barely any bags or anything.
I got told this on a trip to the US recently. Sleep's always been something I've kind of struggled with anyway, so that actually in a weird way set me up really well for the kids. My wife, she's absolutely fantastic. She kind of takes them at night, and especially the youngest now, allowing me to kind of get whatever sleep I can get. And actually our youngest Zane, at night he's actually been pretty golden. It's only in the last sort of week or two where he's been a bit ill. He's getting up at night. Previous, he's almost slept through the night since not far off in newborn.
Wow.
So we were quite blessed.
Touch wood, that can change, but it probably will.
Well, it just started to take night feeds properly now. And so that's disrupted what we've been used to. And he's ill. So getting used to that. But it'll last. Like, there's nothing out of the ordinary that any other parent kind of isn't going through. So again, there's parents who have got a lot more problems and troubles than we have with our kids. So we're blessed. Went to another business through like a graduate scheme, another rec business to a grad scheme, and found those, did a few years there, and that was kind of my education, if you like, in the talent sector, which just opened my eyes to actually the opportunities of what you have potential for out there, rather than that first business.
So do you think that first 2 to 4 years or 2 to 3 years in those two businesses, did you develop a passion for the industry then? Is that the excitement? So what was it that excited you about recruitment?
It was again, I'd say this without kind of trying to come across arrogant, it was my vehicle for trying to prove myself that I am as good as I think I can be in whatever it was. At the time when I first started, it wasn't about recruitment. I didn't really care about recruitment. It was just wanting to be competitive, wanting to win. And that was it. Like, if you remember back to the Space Kitchen days, right? For me, back then, it wasn't about the kitchen thing or the call centre or anything like that.
You want the numbers on the board.
I wanted the numbers on the board. And then, I don't know if you remember, there was a chap called Freed who was there. He wasn't there long because I lobbied.
You worked in the mornings, didn't you? Did you do a lot of the mornings or?
No, I did weekends because I was still at school.
That was it, yeah.
But then I lobbied Teresa and said, I don't think he's very good. I don't think he's very good. I think I can do a better job. It was Sharon who first said no to me a few times. And I said, look, give me 2 weekends of his job. I will prove to you that I'll do a better. If I do a better job in those 2 weeks, give me the job. If I don't. And I got the job. And it was just that thing of, right, what's the next step after that? What's the next step after that? What's the next step after that? That was my quest. I could have ended up in anything else. It might have been tech sales, might have been literally anything else. It wouldn't have mattered because it was about me trying to prove to myself that I'm as good as my arrogance and self-belief thinks I am.
So when you started recruitment, how old would you have been then?
21.
So at 21, and I think this is important for people to listen to as well, because I've had a few people reach out about this specifically in terms of what they want to be doing. And I'm 25, I'm 30, I'm 18, I don't know what I want to be doing. Everybody else around me knows what they want to do in their life, and they want to know what career they want to go into. For me personally, I didn't really understand what I really wanted to do until I was probably 25. And even then, I'd been in telecoms 5 years. I didn't know if I wanted to be in telecoms. I liked it and I enjoyed it and it was good. But I think very similar to you, it was the vessel for me to learn. And what I wanted to do at 25 was I understood that I don't care what it is, I do want to run my own business because there's aspects to that I want, positive and negative ones that I want to experience for myself, and I think I could be really good at it. The industry wasn't relevant to me at the time. Now, obviously, I am passionate about the industry and very much want to try and change the industry for the better to put the power and autonomy back to the client, because that's where it should be rather than the big providers. But at 21, you just started in recruitment. You know, you didn't know what you wanted to do. You found yourself in recruitment, but like you said, it could have been anything.
Yeah, there's a cliche, and I said to that, everyone just falls into it. No one kind of grows up wanting to be in recruitment.
Yeah.
That's not you don't even realise it's a proper career path and so on as well. There's so much change in the industry as well, because so many young people get into it that most people kind of are in it for maybe 12 months or so. And
they sold the dream, aren't they? Which is you build your own desk, etc., etc.
Yeah, spot on. So no, at 21 I definitely didn't know that I wanted to be in it. And when I first joined at TJC, I didn't think I'd be in it for anything more than sort of 12 months.
Yeah.
I thought it was just going to be a stepping stone onto another place, onto another place, onto another place.
Did you know at that point you wanted to run your own business?
Not specifically, no. I've always, from the influence of my dad, I've always known that I would at some point. And even being a 5-year-old, they tell me stories of the kind of stuff that how I used to play when I was at home if it'd be raining or something like that. And as a game, I'd run my own business as a game, which I don't really have many memories of.
So you'd probably be like a mean Monopoly player or something.
They said that it was something like I had an old broken phone, like a landline phone, and I used to have an order book, and I used to pretend to take orders on the phone of whatever, I think it was stationery that I'd written out or something like that, and that was how I'd occupy myself if it was raining outside or something like that. I was heavily influenced by my dad on what he did when he kind of came over here. So I always knew at some point, yes, I'll run my own thing. Through before school, before uni and kind of after, did bits to make sure I was always okay on money. I knew I'd run it, but when I first got into recruitment, I didn't go in thinking, right, I'm going to do this for X amount of time and then I'm going to go and run my own business. I went into because I wanted to start a career. If I'm being really honest, I'd left Northampton, I'd done my studies down in London, I wasn't coming back to Northampton anytime soon. And it was that pride thing of, I'm not coming back to the town with my kind of tail between my legs, it just would have felt like failure to me.
Yeah. So
I wanted to do something where I could succeed on my own 2 feet in London.
Where does the drive come from?
Dad. Didn't recognise that until mid-20s.
So talk to me about your relationship with your parents. What do they do?
So they're in Pakistan at the moment. Dad's out there building a house for want of nothing else to do, like officially retired and stuff, but he can't sit still. So he's now out there building a house. It's meant to be their kind of their last home type thing.
Yeah.
But I know exactly what he'll do. He will get that thing built, and he's spent a good few years on it now, and he'll sell it because he won't be worried about what's his next thing after that, because otherwise, he's just going to sit there basically.
So he's physically doing the building of the house himself, or is he
he's project managing, if you want to call it that. But he needs something to do. He needs a task or a mission to kind of focus on, if you like. So they kind of come between here and there and so on as well. Close to my parents, and growing up, didn't really see too much of Dad. He was just working.
One career, what did they used to do?
No career. So when I was really young, and just before I was born, actually, he had quite a few properties in and around Northampton. And I'm assured that actually we were reasonably well off at the time, pretty comfortable as a family. And then the market crashed, I think in 89. That Tuesday? 88 or 89, I can't remember.
Yeah.
We pretty much lost everything, just about kept on to our own.
So you would have been like 1-2 then?
It was as I was, yeah. So it was as I was born. So I think it's either 88 or 89, I can't remember. But we just about kept on to our family home. Growing up, we would have bailiffs knock at the door, and I never knew they shielded us from it completely. So we were just taught that if someone knocked on your door, you always kind of peek through the window first. Not knowing it's because we were avoiding bailiffs.
Yeah.
It was, I just thought that's just what everyone did, right? But they never let on those kind of troubles and stuff like that. So at some point he's done everything from the property thing, drove buses, owned shops. Mostly through my childhood he drove a taxi around Northampton.
Yeah.
And just drove all hours that he could to make sure that we didn't look for anything, basically. And then more towards teenage years, started getting back towards the property way and sort of started buying at places in around Northampton, Kingsthorpe areas and places like that again.
Yeah.
And then retired. Just been spending more time staying here, Pakistan, stuff like that, really.
Yeah, so still got a base here.
Yeah, it was in Dustin, yeah.
So you've mentioned your dad a few times, so what have you learned most from your dad, do you think? That you can take through into what you're doing now?
He's mid-70s and he still works harder than most people on earth. He doesn't have to. He's comfortable, he's got a pension, he can be looked after by us if he needs anything. It's just that insane desire, and that's what he's grown up with. He's never had any hobbies, he's never travelled, likes the idea of it, but actually also not that bothered of it in a lot of ways as well. It's just that work ethic, and I think of actually the conditions that he's been through and the kind of work that he's done. So speaking to my mum now, and or my brother now, and they're kind of saying, look, the hours that you do, you need to get more rest or whatever it might be.
They're saying that about you?
Yeah. And it's the thing that I always come back to. In fact, I think I said this to my mum just a few weeks ago. What did Dad used to do? How many hours did he work? How many times do you say that to them? And actually, if you look at the type of work that I do, sat down a lot, meetings a lot, office type stuff.
It's different stuff. It's mental rather than physical.
Yeah, he would have been in factories at one point and then driving buses in the day. He would have been doing a lot more kind of physical stuff. If he was able to do it, why am I not able to do it? So there's that. He hasn't got anything in him. He came through a lot harder conditions, don't get me wrong, and I'm never comparing myself to what he's been through because I'm not. They shielded me from all of that.
So what are those sort of conditions you mentioned about people knocking at doors and stuff like that?
Yep.
What else is he
stuff way before my time that I only had no knowledge of, to be honest with you. So I was living in a house, sharing it with brothers and things like that, and loads of other people and things like that. You come to this country when you're 14, you've got little to no education, you don't speak the language. I think he said he came in 66. It's going to be a tough life, and the environment's very different then from acceptance of people from an ethnic background and stuff as well, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough life there. No education, you're working in factories, you're doing manual type jobs.
Why did he take the decision he wanted to come reside?
I don't really think it was his choice as much as my knowledge is. My brother will kill me for not really knowing this. I don't think it was much of his choice. I think it was more of he's one of the hardest working people in his family amongst his siblings. He was more kind of sent here to earn better than what he could have earned back home. Yeah. We're from a really small kind of mountain village, so opportunities aren't exactly great. Earn, send money home, and that was it. And so everything that he earned, as much as he could, I think almost about 50% of anything that he earned, he sent home, whilst then trying to support family here, whilst trying to build a business here and shops and properties and stuff like that as well. So he's come from that kind of frugal mentality that I'll never ever be able to tap into, ever.
Yeah, so it seems like the common similarities are the work ethic, the drive, the determination, the passion, the wanting to do the next thing, the wanting to get better and do better for yourself, for family and stuff like that. Yeah. And like it's slightly manifest in different ways.
Yeah. And I didn't even realise how much of an influence he was probably until mid-20s.
Really?
Yeah. And it's now that I look back and think, I didn't see him much, but I don't begrudge him for any of that either. Yeah. It's just that insane work ethic.
What does he say about what you're doing now? What's his opinion?
It's not really something that's talked about much, and not for any particular reason or anything like that. He asked me questions about the business, I'm pretty confident and know he's proud, but it's not anything that kind of comes up like too much, because if I'm honest, like my impression of the business, I am proud of it, don't get me wrong, but it's not anywhere where I think it can and should be yet. So it's not anything that I kind of go shouting off from the rooftops about just yet. When it gets to somewhere where I genuinely think that it can and should be, then I'll be a lot more open about it, I guess.
Yeah. So you mentioned your mum's got a different opinion.
Yeah. Mum.
And I know this quite personally as well. Seems like very similar opinions to my mum in terms of, you know, she sees you doing this and doing that and working hard, working long, stressing out, having successes, having failures, and kind of wonders why you do it sometimes.
Is that? Mum just wants me to be alright more than anything. She doesn't care about anything else. Just, are you alright? Are your family alright? Are you close with your brother and sister? Do you see them? That family's the number one thing.
Do you know what? I'm happy. I'm going to jump in that. I'm happy you said that, because my mum's constantly asking the questions. Are you speaking to him? Are you speaking to her? Yeah. Have you rung your sister? Have you rung your brother? Have you spoken to him? It's like, yeah, we speak regularly. Yeah. Like, we're in a WhatsApp group. We talk all the time. Yeah. Like, you think that we're not talking? We're talking.
That's the number one thing. She asked about the business, but again, not from a. I don't even think she'll know any of like facts, figures, or really care in. Yeah. Like for them being facts and figures, it's like more of a. Are you alright? Is the business alright? Is it getting on alright? Are you progressing? More about me than anything else.
Yeah. So yeah, which is well, that's going to be a part of it. Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, that's a good bit of background knowledge, I think. I want to just go on to some questions. So, I said to you before we sort of went on and went live that I put a Facebook video up live last night, and sort of asked the community that are tuning into the pod. Give them a bit of a context of some of the things we're going to be talking about, without mentioning any names or businesses, etc., and just some suggestions for some questions to pose to you, given the journey that you're on at the moment and that you've been on. So I'm going to just shout a couple of those questions out. Sure. Chap called Ben reached out last night and has asked, business question really, is the business different from what you first visioned it to be?
Yes, 100%. Because we had, I think there's a lot of the cultural things that still remain and what we wanted the business to be. But at the same time, as anyone who is first going into running a business with no prior experience at that kind of level from an operational side, someone who's kind of been a consultant in our industry anyway, and this will apply to all industries, you only have one view of things and you only think from your angle because you just don't have the perspective of everything else. Yeah. So only when you start to run a business that you recognise, as a really kind of small example, how much things cost. Yeah. So where we were talking before on like in our sector job boards and stuff like that, you don't know the cost of those things, and you don't know the usage of those things.
Yeah, you've worked for a business and you look at it and you think, oh, they've got a job board, we're going to need one of those, and you're like, well, maybe that's going to be a few £100. You look at it, it's thousands.
Yeah, and it's not even that, it's the efficiency of it and things as well. So it's thousands each month or whatever it might be, but it's are we using it to its maximum efficiency? Credits aren't rolling over. We've used it to probably 50% of its capacity this month. It's like maybe £1,000 that we've just wasted through not using it to its efficiency. Yeah. And do we knock on the head because it's not being used? Oh, X person wants it. As a consultant, I would have said, well, why are we getting rid of a resource? But now as a business owner, I could look at it and say, well, actually, we haven't seen any ROI from it, so we're not really using it. There's no point keeping a whole platform that one person's using where the other 35, 40 people aren't using it. So those kind of things, which you just don't know until you know, that's where the business has changed.
Yeah. Okay. Sonny reached out last night as well. He's talking about employees. So when you were starting out, you've got over 40 people now. You've got offices in the UK and different areas around the globe. So when you first set out, how did you start to select your first few employees? What was the process?
So we were still lucky in that, in terms of both Scott and myself, we'd managed people and teams and hired people previously. So we had the idea of what we're doing around that. I know the kind of person that I wanted in the business, and even that has kind of evolved and changed and so on as well. But yeah, we had a good idea of the kind of people that we were looking for, the kind of personality traits that we're looking for in people. I think we're probably a bit more not that we're softer now, but diversified our ideas around people and so on before, whereas I think at the beginning we probably hired or tried to hire more people that we felt were in our image. I think that's just an experience, to be honest. So that profile's changed a little bit, but yeah, we've always had kind of a clear idea of the type of person that we wanted: work ethic, ambition, drive, willingness to grasp an opportunity, willingness to kind of learn quickly and absorb things quickly. Those kind of key things, which I think most people tend to look for, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think it's easy when you start up, especially if you've got limited funds or limited time, and you're trying to do everything yourself at that point anyway. I think you tend to look for, and I'm not saying this is the wrong thing to do, but I think from my experience, you tend to look for experience and think that experience is going to fix my problem.
Whereas you didn't at the beginning.
Again, some of the best people we've got in our businesses are people that have never done telecoms before in their life. No preconceptions, but they've got the raw traits that we want, that ability to want to develop themselves, the ability to learn, the ability to want to work tremendously hard. They've got their own personal drivers, goals and ambitions that we can utilise and understand as a business to try and help drive them to drive the business forward, to go and deliver on the business's goals and ambitions. I would absolutely sit here now and say I would rather take somebody, even if it takes a bit longer to get them going and a bit longer for them to be delivering the service that we want, I'd rather take somebody with no experience but that has all of those drivers versus somebody with experience that maybe just be looking at Guru as a stepping stone to the next job in 2 years' time.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that heavily influenced Scott and myself, we were top performers in previous business when we first started, in our first basically rec role, right? We started a few months apart from each other. We started from the ground up. We had no prior experience, so we were basically grads at the time.
Yeah.
We were two of the top performers in our business, and then one of the third top performers, he also was a new starter as us. We always just favoured that homegrown type model. Yeah. We're also massive into our sports, and you've always got that kind of romantic story, right, of homegrown players and footy players and stuff like that. So that's why we went down that route. As our very first hires, they didn't have any experience.
Which is tough in its own right because you're completely starting from scratch.
Yeah, we had some experience in building them from previous places and stuff anyway. Yeah. So we just backed ourselves to.
Did you know these people?
No. We went through a hiring campaign, interviewed. I don't remember how many we interviewed at the time, but like in a reception place of a Hilton or a bar at Hilton type thing. Got them hired over a few weeks.
So you'd absolutely, for anybody listening, because again, part of the people that are listening to this are people that could be wanting to start their own business or have started their own business and are looking to kind of make those first few hires. Your takeaway, what would be the top maybe two things of what you just said there that you would advise those people?
So I can say this now as well with our press having involved. Have a clear idea of what you're looking for and make it as objective and consistent as possible from interview to interview. So if you are going out there and interviewing people, like we've more recently employed like a scorecard system to make it as consistent as a process from one person to the next. Because otherwise you're trying to judge people or evaluate people too subjectively. And then it becomes a lot more about how are you on form on that particular day versus if you're knackered or if you're stressed or if you're distracted with other things. And your judgment piece on that is
going to be actually pretty poor, and it's more a reflection of you than the individual that you're interviewing.
Yeah, I suppose it's a bit like a driving test or a bit like a school test, isn't it? You've got some people that have the knowledge and are very, very good drivers, but just when that pressure cooker hour is on and you've got to go and do the test, it's people fail and people buckle, but it doesn't make you a bad driver.
Yeah.
Could just be that you're not getting on with that environment. I think it's down, I agree with you there, it's down to the employer to also 50% to make sure that environment is conducive with that person performing and for that person to bring themselves to that shop window and do the best they can.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Just on that, it's not in here, but just something that's come to my head. What's your view on CVs these days?
In what regard? So why?
I'll give you some context. I hate CVs because most of the time, the person who's wrote them, the person's name that's on the top maybe hasn't wrote all the CV. I think they egg up some of the things they've done on the CV, or don't talk about some important things that they have done as well, and go for and against. And I don't really feel that a CV tells a story. If I look back to the last 10 people I've interviewed for whatever the position is, I look back to the individual that's walked out the door and the CV I've had at the start, and my perception is completely different. So therefore, what's the relevance of a CV? I, as a hiring business, don't want to see a CV. I'd rather that individual give me a 2-minute video of why they think they're good for the job and what they're about as an individual, as a first kind of understanding of that person.
Yep.
I don't know how you guys are. Maybe it's different for C-level individuals and directors of businesses, and it doesn't work for lower level roles, but I would like to see a lot more personality, a lot more showcase with that individual for me to understand as an employer whether you fit our culture, whether we want to take you further, or really just to understand and engage with that individual to give them the best chance of succeeding and being hired versus words on a page. What's your kind of view on that?
A CV, it's just like your shop window, like you mentioned before, right? So similarly, if you take that into another world for a second, you can see a jumper or you can see a coat in a shop, right? You don't just buy it just looking at it on a hanger or on a mannequin, do you? You try it on.
Yeah.
Does it fit? Does it not fit? Do I like the material? Does it not? Maybe in fact, does it not? Whatever it might be, right? And it's the same thing with the CV. That's your product on the shop window type thing.
Yeah.
It's got to be a kind of gateway to saying, do I want to try this person on, i.e. do I want to meet them, do I want to get to know their story, do I want to find out more about them, does it, from a cultural and ambition perspective, they fit what I'm looking for, what the business is about, do we fit them, etc. So
do you think you can do that on a CV?
I think yes and no, parts of it. So if I look at the profile now and I see someone, we're a scaling business ourselves, right? If I see someone jumping around from 6 months, 9 months here, 12 months there, 6 months again, blah, 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 that then leads me to not a judgment on that person, that then leads me to some questions about, right, I want to know more about the specifics as to why, and then through my questioning, I can then make an evaluation of right, is this person flaky? Have they got resilience or not? Those kind of things which I look for in people, right?
Yeah.
So it leads me to questioning about certain things that I am looking for in the person.
Yeah.
I think you'll get a lot, also in some ways you get a lot more from video, 100%, because you can see how someone communicates and something and so on as well, right? And you won't be able to get that from a CV. But I still think that there are some useful traits from it. That's, if I'm being really honest as well, I think it's still such a traditional ingrained thing that it might be more of a generational thing, and maybe over the next sort of couple of generations it becomes extinct. But right here, right now, I still think it has its uses, basically.
The way that I look at hiring with Guru is I don't do CVs. If I want to know about job history, we can go on LinkedIn or have a look at those sort of things, which can give me a sense of, like you said there, an understanding of questioning based on what they've done, how long they've been somewhere, and that can go for or against. How we recruit Guru is the first stage is, CV. If I get sent a CV, I don't really look at it. I get a video, understand a bit about that individual. That captures confidence in part of somebody wanting to work here and me wanting to employ somebody is they don't need to be the finished article because they're not going to be. They utilise our business to improve, but I want them to have at least an understanding that being able to record something that's honest, trustworthy, transparent, even if it's not the best presentation in the world, it's not about what it looks like, it's more about that individual and what I can get off of that video, which will then spur me on to get excited about that person. I find myself struggling to get excited about a CV. I get excited but that's just me. I get excited when I meet people, see people.
And it's, like I said, it's that window into it. You've got to.
I do agree. It's historically the way it's always been done. But then again, in terms of what you're doing with your business, is it what's going to happen in 10 years? Who knows?
So it's something that we're constantly asking. Where is our sector headed over the next sort of 5-10 years?
I think you've answered this one pretty much anyway. But I'm going to ask it anyway. So, a chap called Foxy reached out about this one in terms of who's your biggest influence and why.
Many. So Dad, I've also talked about as an individual one. My brother as well, for different reasons, different traits. Scott as a business partner, we're constantly challenging each other. And for instance, being in that meeting with the accountant the other day, I don't need to be there. That's something for me to say, I want to be as well-rounded as I possibly can be, and I want more exposure to that to understand more around the finance side of it, because that's normally his bag and his role.
Yeah.
As well as other people out there in business in general that I see who either achieved more than us so far, but that's also from a competitive perspective. If you're talking, there are some sort of celebs out there who, from a business perspective, influence me.
Who do you follow? Who do you listen to when they talk?
So less listen to, some of the stuff I listen to is like the High Performance podcast and things like that. Yeah. More into like audible books that I tend to read. We're talking kind of business people that I do rate, and for different reasons in there as well. Mark Wahlberg, from a business perspective, I've got a lot of time for him.
Yeah.
He's involved in a lot of different things. His work ethic is insane. Forget the movies and that kind of celeb stuff.
You don't see that, do you? You don't see that side naturally.
He brought out a show recently, I think it's only like 6 episodes or something, like called Wahlburgers.
Yeah.
No, Wall Street, sorry. And that's about all the different businesses that he's involved in, and it just shows his work ethic. The guy's just always on. Like, if he's flying from one place to another, he's on a plane, he's just on. And he's having this meeting at that time, and he's dragging others along with him to the gym at like 4 a.m. in a hotel room. But then he's having a meeting as he's doing it. And like, these guys aren't gym goers when you look at them. But that's him getting a gym workout and having a meeting about business at the same time.
Yeah.
The guy's just always on.
Machine.
And I respect that so much. There's a couple of real estate brokers in New York, in America, who, in a similar way, they're just always on. And it's how are they able to achieve something at such a young age? And that's, I take a lot of influence from people like that. So before, because when I started off, I was single. So I didn't have a wife and kids and etc. then as well. So I was able to fully just concentrate on it. And actually, I've been doing that for the best part of about a decade, where I didn't really have any of the major responsibilities on a daily basis. So when I first got into the industry, I worked. I didn't really know anyone else in London.
So you were single when you first started in recruitment. When you started FB, were you married then?
No, single.
No? Okay.
So met my wife after we'd started. So I didn't really have any responsibilities at the time.
Was that maybe for the first year you were single when you started the business-ish? Given you've got a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old, are we talking about a year or so?
Yeah. So got married in September 17. So I was at that time it was just a business. That was my only responsibility at the time. Yeah, pretty much. And so it was that, and then the different challenge. So my wife's from the northeast, so she moved down to London for me, and then we're in the Midlands now. And I'm really, really conscious that she doesn't really have, outside of my family, she doesn't really have anyone around her. So I can't be that single track-minded person anymore, because it's unfair on her, unfair in our relationship as well. So that balance is something I'm always trying to work on. For example, I don't see my kids as much as I want to see them.
Yeah.
But I am also, in a weird way, not comfortable with it, but know that that's to a degree going to be the case, and there are reasons for that as well.
I suppose you're mirroring what your and dad's relationship, I suppose, when you were younger.
In some ways, yeah.
Do you think that's why it's more acceptable in your mind to be happy with that?
No.
I think there's some people out there that probably listen to that and think, well, you want to have as much family time as possible. And I know from personal experience it's very, very hard to strike up that balance. But do you think that there's areas that you could, if that's your biggest sacrifice, I suppose family is really, really important to most people. It's important to yourself. If that's the biggest sacrifice and you know that, how are you going to fix it? Are you going to fix it?
Yes and no. Do I want more semblance of a balance in some degree? Yes, but does that mean I'm going to start doing a 9 to 5? No. I was really open and honest with Simon even before we got married, I was saying, my industry is not a 9 to 5 industry anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I work a lot of hours when I wasn't running a business and stuff as well. Now running a business, that's only going to get worse. Have I made adaptations now, especially since having the kids and stuff? 100%. I take my son to nursery, getting ready for nursery and stuff in the mornings now. I would have never dreamt of doing that years ago and stuff. I would have thought that, listen, I'm not even getting involved in that bit pre-kids.
Yeah.
Right? So there are adaptations there, but am I it's not the same as my dad because, and no disrespect to my dad, like growing up as a kid, I didn't really have a very personal relationship with him. It was more kind of instruction order.
He's my dad.
Yeah, and that type of thing.
Yeah.
We never really had much of a discussion about things. Not that I can massively remember anyway. And that's changed now as I've got older and stuff.
Do you think that's a generational thing?
Oh yeah, that's a generational thing. That's the environment that he grew up in and stuff as well. An element of, I mentioned before, Simon's kind of moved around for and with me. It's not fair if I'm just kind of cracking on doing all these other things and like doing what I want to do, and she's in a different type of situation to me and doesn't really know anyone outside of my family. It's like making friends in MK and stuff like that, but again, it's relatively new and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I just want to spend time with the kids, like watch them grow up and things like that. Like my eldest, he's 3. He's got this amazing personality, and I don't want to not know him as I'm growing up, and I don't want to not be close to him as he gets teenage years and stuff.
Are you scared that could happen, given when you're scaling the business and working hard and working long and doing what you need to do to try and be successful in your own right with the company? Is there an element of fear there that could happen?
I haven't thought about it as fear. If you ask me the question, yeah, I recognise that it could happen. Hope it doesn't. But no, I've never really thought about it as a fear that could happen. I would hope that I'm fostering a close enough relationship with him that it doesn't go that way.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to give him my all. When I'm with him, I try to give him my all. I'm not always perfect at it, right, being on my phone, on emails or whatever, but I generally try to put it down.
I've got a personal question for you, which I struggle with, which is being present.
Yeah.
So we're here now, we're focused on what we're talking about and we're engaged with it in this room, because that's what we're doing. If I'm at home, but as an owner, my head sometimes is elsewhere. And especially when things are stressful, when things are going on and when things are important and 10 things happen at the same time, they're all equally as important as each other, and you just need to kind of methodically pick your way through them and try and figure it out. Sometimes I'm speaking to my other half, I'm speaking to my kids, and I'm there in person and I'm there to talk, but my mind is sometimes elsewhere, and I struggle with that a lot. Do you feel the same when you're at home, or do you find it easier to sort of switch off and shut the laptop and think that's me done? I'm going to focus the next couple of hours on my son.
I've never switched off, and even if I try to make myself unavailable on my phone or stuff like that, you're right, it's still there at the back of my mind. I'm still like going through things and trying to find solutions to stuff, or what can we do about this and that, and etc. etc. Simon, I openly say to her, pull me out on it. If you see me on my phone too much and around home and stuff like that, pull me up on it, because I don't want to be doing that at the same time. Yeah, she does. She definitely does. And again, it's that thing of balance, right, where I'll go through better times and then I slowly slip, and I need her to pull me back to that and say to me, you're not doing so much and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. But those thoughts are always there. Those, like, you're in the shower, and it's sort of 2 or 3 things that are going through your head. It's like very quick, send myself a quick voice note or something like that, so I can deal with that and pick that up because I've had a great idea or whatever it might be. That I don't think as an owner ever switches off. I struggle to believe that an owner could switch off in that way.
See, that's some of the elements around people that have reached out to me over the last couple of months since doing the podcast, and people that have wanted to understand what it's like to run a business. And it's that for me is quite significant. It's such a small you could put 20 hours a day if you want to, and the only person you're going to affect is yourself. Whereas there's a lot of people listening to this that maybe are already in a family environment where if they're looking to start a business, they need to understand, look, there's tons of positives, and there really, really is. It's not all about the negatives and the challenges, but Christ, there's stress, anxiety, and sleepless nights. Often it's common, and those little ideas, it's not just the negatives, it could be good ideas as well, but it's that whole, the brain is still going, it's 24/7.
It is, yeah. Look, I often say to people that I meet and things that I don't know if I would have been able to do, and Scott was in different situations because he had been in a relationship for a long time and then got married and stuff as well. But Kay's always been understanding. She's again absolutely fantastic. She
Kay's
gets it.
Scott's partner.
Yes, Scott's wife. Yeah,
Scott's wife. Yeah.
And she's been absolutely phenomenal. I don't know if I'd have been able to do to the level that we did it in that first sort of year, 18 months or whatever, if I was in a relationship. Now, that's not me saying I couldn't have set up a business if I was in a marriage and stuff like that either.
Yeah.
I think I would have just found a way.
Yeah.
I just don't think we would have been able to do it to the level that we did in that first year.
All the same way.
Yeah, in that way, because I had nothing else to concentrate on. I was, we were working all hours. Sometimes I'd be at his, it's like 2, 3 in the morning. Sometimes we'd kit there, Kay'd make dinner or whatever. We'd be drinking some dirty, cheap Red Bull to stay away to do some like projecty, some like basically non-sales stuff at the beginning, all the ops stuff, all the IT stuff.
Well, everything
we're doing out of hours.
Yeah.
I remember setting up our server up until like 1 a.m. just replaying the same YouTube videos on one dude over and over again. While Scott was chasing invoices at like 12, 1 a.m. I look back on those memories with fondness as well.
Yeah.
Could I have done that with a wife and kids at home? Not in the same way, because I still have that element of responsibility. So, like, even though Simon takes Zane and like through the night, despite how many times he's woken up last night and stuff like that, in my head I've got to get my oldest up, I've got to get ready for nursery, I've got to get Fred breakfast ready, etc., etc. So that's different responsibilities now. Whereas in the past, at that time, I used to leave at sort of 5:30, 6 in the house or my flat when I was in London.
Yeah.
Now I can't do that because of 7 till 8 is I've got to get myself ready. Yeah. So yeah, it's changed. Would I have been able to do it? Yes. Would have been different. Would have been harder, but possible. And I am buoyed by so many people that I see out there who have seen stories of single mums with a kid, 2 kids, and they're literally looking after them on their own. And then in the evenings they're setting up and running a successful business. And I give them so much more kudos than I'd ever give me or Scott, because that is so hard. Yeah, so hard to do. So again, another kind of source of influence.
And it might not be about work, it might just be about getting up in the morning and getting on with their life, or investing time into their children when they've got other things that they're doing or whatever. But I think when you take the time to step back and look holistically at people, and I do a lot of that in terms of just analysing people, listening and learning about people, whether it's work or personal. There's a lot of superstars out there that give themselves no credit at all, and somebody that's deemed as successful because social media says you're successful or you've got loads of noughts on your bank account, actually when you look at other people who are successful in their own right, and you can take a lot of motivation from that.
Yeah, you can. I don't think you just have to look at the top people in each industry. I tend to look at things like work ethic is probably the number one thing that I look at in anyone.
Yeah.
And it's probably the most inspirational thing to me.
Which is probably why you mentioned Wahlberg, because the one big thing that I got from the things that you said around, obviously management at the time's pretty good, but he's get up and go, and his drive and ambition and his consistency to work hard constantly all the time is unparalleled.
Yeah, and look, that might be for the camera as well. In terms of he's putting on a show, right? He's not going to take videos of himself being lazing around the house and ice cream days and stuff like that. But actually, if you look at what he's involved in, I don't think you can be involved in all the different things. A clothing line, a media production company. He obviously does films and everything as well.
Which is full on, is it?
A burger joint that he's got with his brothers. I think in total he's got something like 7 businesses.
That's the stuff you know about as well.
Yeah,
you know.
So being involved in life, you can't be lazy and be involved. So right now I couldn't comprehend being involved in 7 different things where you're able to do those and do this.
Well, you look at your own situation, you think, crikey, I'm at capacity now, and you think, well, actually, look at this guy. Capacity can be extended.
Yeah. And I'm not disheartening's like it to some degree, but I find that as a setback, and it's almost like that's a really big disappointment for me personally. I'd take it.
I suppose that for you, where you're going to go back to that kind of analyse, learn, and you're going to probably go over that certain situations and think,
100%.
Is there a learn there because you've got a good guy and he's decided to walk out? Yeah. Why is that? What have we done? And I think historically, in business 10 years ago, especially from my experience anyway, it would have been employees' fault. 100% of the time, employees' fault. You're not good enough. You're not committed enough. You're not working hard enough. You're not part of the culture. You're not a team player, and all this stuff. And actually, when you look at it, has the business done enough to engage you in those areas? It's a 50-50 street.
Yeah, there's been like attrition in our sector is quite high anyway, right? but there's been people who've left for they've just not seen the vision, or they've joined and like pretty quickly decided that the culture's not for them or whatever it is. And I wish we'd have been able to do more to ascertain that at the beginning, and not just for us, but for that individual as well.
Yeah.
And so that's probably would leave me the biggest disappointment if somebody does ever leave, because at some point we thought that they'd be a really good part of our business, but also our business is really good for them.
I suppose your biggest positive and biggest element that you feel good about is seeing those people you care about do really well, and use that as use FB as a vessel to achieve and be happy in their lives. But also the biggest setback and disappointment is going to be when that opportunity is not taken.
Yeah. I mean, I was sat with a 19-year-old, 20-year-old yesterday, been with us since March. He's doesn't need the money. He's in a great, his family's in a great position. He's earning more than he ever thought he could in such a short time frame, like 10 odd months. And we're now talking to him about progression into management at 20 after like 10 months. That's the kind of story I love.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that we want more and more to scale up.
Listen, if you're right, you're right. If you're good enough, you're good enough. If you're willing to learn, put the work in, then you need the employer to support that rather than look. I mean, I look at my time. I used to work in NatWest, and I was kicking ass, doing really well in loads of different areas. And the opportunity I wanted to go and do was okay. Now I'm working in a big branch. I want to go take my own branch. Oh, you can't do that till 25. How's that fair?
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing well. Like, give me the opportunity. Check in on me when you need to. Sit on me as much as you need to. Just put me in a smaller branch. Give me a shot. No, look, it's just an unwritten rule. You're just not going to get that till 25. I'm like, I'm 19. I'm not going to wait here for 6 years.
Yeah,
so, and I left within 2 weeks because the business couldn't give me. And if I was still there now, what would I be doing there now? How much value would I add for them? And again, like what you said, it's not an arrogant statement, but I'm confident that I've always worked tremendously hard and delivered in every single business that I've worked in, including this one. I'd be adding value. You know, I might not be the best, I might not be the worst. I might be in the middle, but I'll certainly be a good employee. I'll be adding a lot of value. But the traditional way of them looking after people in terms of opportunity or lack of was down to age. And I just think that's fucked up.
Yeah, so it's something that we said from day one that in terms of our business, it's not anything we would ever employ. There's a true meritocracy in terms of our business, so it doesn't matter about your age or anything like that. He will get there quicker than people who've been there longer in our business, but he's deserving of it.
Yeah.
So why would we hold him back?
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
It needs to be treated as such.
Yeah.
Okay, last couple of things then. So last question actually from Dave, which is going slightly into something else, but we'll ask it anyway. In terms of your key clients, so I think Dave works in a role where he looks after a lot of key clients within his business.
Okay.
How much money or time do you reinvest into those clients directly in terms of spending time with them, money invested in taking them and doing things? Do you have a plan with your business or a sort of strategy in place with your existing key clients where you invest time and money back into those relationships?
Yeah.
And is that set in stone or is that bespoke, dependent on the client? Or
it'll always be independent of each client, and there's no like set budget per se of like we can only spend X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I've done stuff where I've taken clients to Michelin star restaurants for their birthdays.
Yeah.
And that's more of a personal thing, where I've had some clients, one was at my wedding, taking out a client and her husband to meals and things like that because they'd never eaten at certain type of restaurants and things like that. I've taken other clients go-karting at one of the best tracks in the fastest track in Europe as well, and took about 10 of them, and there's about 10 of us. To be honest, it's less about the investment into them so we get more business or anything like that. I want to know my clients, I want to work with my clients, I want to spend time with them, just get to know them on a human level.
Yeah.
So it's getting them out of a work setting and actually what you're into. Cool, let's go and watch a game together. Let's go and do this. Let's whatever it might be. If it's a restaurant or if it's just going out or whatever it might be, just get to know each other a little bit better. And it's all about the human element of it. So
a lot of businesses operate that in a very much a cookie cutter, off the shelf type thing, which is we've got 50 key clients. We're going to go and see them every 3 months. We're going to send them a bottle of wine at Christmas. And for me, it's kind of like, well, the example would be, do they drink wine? Do you know what they drink? Do you know whether they like alcohol or not? Do you know what they're into? Do you know them well enough to be able to say, that is the thing I'm going to do for that person? Because you've got 50 different people there. They're all into different things. They all get... they all will reciprocate that gesture in a certain way, positive or negative or neutral. The more important question for me is, do you know your clients well enough to be able to say, let's go and do this? And that's where the time needs to come in, I think, in terms of managing key accounts and key clientele is, if you don't know that information, then what you're about to do might just be a complete waste, and completely as far from what they want and what they need as possible, and that could actually detriment the relationship because it proves the lack of understanding.
We've done so many different things around that, where I can think back to one client where I just remember something small. I took down a tube of Voltarol because she had a bad back, and I just turned up the office and like, what are you doing here? Like, just here, take this. I'm not after anything. I don't need anything from you. Yeah. You mentioned it in the call that we had. I think it was earlier that morning. So I'm coming by anyway. Here you go. Knock yourself out. I'll help you. I wasn't expecting it. It's like, again, that's just on the personal relationship.
But it's listening. Like what's that customer? Whether you do the business or don't do the business, what's that customer going to take from that? It's going to take that you're diligent, you listen. You know, you're a human being. You've got kindness. You've got a degree of detail. You're analytical. You're personable. All the stuff that people value in, regardless of the brand, the relationship between the two people.
It's nothing to do with business. It's like I would do that for a mate type thing. If I knew that they were struggling with something and I knew something that they didn't that could help them. I've got one guy in the business who in the past has gone and stayed at a client's house over a weekend and was just on the piss with them and things like that.
But what a great relationship to have. I mean, one of the things that we really strive for in our DNA is we want to turn customers into friends. That's the phrase that's in our DNA. And when you actually look at some of the relationships, the calls that we get on a Friday night when they've had a couple of drinks and it's like, how's your week been, Arran? And it's like, yeah, all right, mate, no problem. Are you going to come and see us soon? It's like, yeah, absolutely. And it's personal stuff, and it's, you know, and we've got probably 10% of our clients, I would say, and this is really, for me, the area that we need to improve on as a business, is we've got probably 10% of clients that we like. I would say we know everything about them. So much stuff, personal, professional, business, family, children, everything, to try and really understand them and really put the time into doing that. And in growing the organisation, naturally I think you can dilute that because of time and because of where you put your time and where you invest your time. The big area that I would like to improve over the next 12 months is to turn that 10% into a higher percentage and get to know our clients better. We do a really good job. We're personable, we're professional, we turn things around quickly. We're, you know, again, not an arrogant statement, we do. When you hear some of the horror stories in this industry, we're not the same. We're just not programmed the same at all. And some of the things that people do, it's just, I would never even dream of doing that in a million years to line my pocket. Just, you've got to do the right thing. But I think the big area that I would like to improve as a goal for next year is forming more friendships with our customers.
Yeah.
For me as an owner especially, I'd like to have more friendships with our customers.
I think it's important. I think it's just that human element of doing business, right? I think one of our biggest tech clients, especially through last year, we met them by beating them in a 5-star footy tournament in the final. And then it was off the back of that. They said, yeah, we did. we beat them in the final. Yeah. It's off the back of that.
Didn't even let them win.
But they weren't the client before then.
Yeah.
It was actually when they're doing the trophy thing at the end, where the town said, "Oh, great that you guys are here, by the way, because blah blah blah." And that's the relationship that starts from there. Yeah. And like we ended up doing so much work with them and supporting them in their growth over the next 12, 18 months or whatever it was. Yeah, it's the human element of doing that kind of thing, which I'm much more interested in. Yeah. And if you get something and we can work together to like support the growth of that business, brilliant. Because if we can do that, then we'll obviously gain from it as well.
Yeah,
mutual gain from it, right? Yeah. If we can't, that's cool. Like, let's keep a relationship, and if we ever can support in any way in the future, great, let's do that.
The biggest thing I've felt is I've gone into loads of pitches with big customers, really big household names, and I've gone in with people, and historically when I've gone in with people that are maybe a bit more junior or people that are not necessarily in a customer-facing role, is that nervousness about going into pitch. And the biggest thing that I say to them, which is kind of comes from what you said there, is forget about the fact that there's Nike or Diesel or an F1 one team or whatever the brand is on the door is irrelevant. You are going to sit around a table with a bunch of people. Yeah. That's what you're doing. That's all you're interested in. They're just normal people, but they just work here. We work in Guru, and that's our brand. You work at FB, that's your brand. That's irrelevant. We're coming to have a conversation. Yes, there's going to be some business stuff discussed. You need to prepare and plan and do all the stuff you need to do. But when you dumb it down completely, one guy talking to another, it's one girl talking to another, and that's all you need to be worried about. And if you get on with that individual, the brands are irrelevant.
Yeah, massively agree. It's something that happens in our industry a lot, where people get put on pedestals, but no one person's better than another because they might earn more or might have a more senior title or anything like that. People are people. It's something that we try and teach all new people that join our business as well.